Hello, it's Mari-Lyn here of Hard at Work, and welcome to another podcast show of how to create impactful legacy. Now, I created the show actually to kind of promote more kindness about businesses, how we incorporate that into our business. And so the podcast series is really about um, showcasing people that are in the space or doing employee engagement, workplace um, culture improvement, all those wonderful things that, most of us are always looking for different ways to do that. So today I have on the call with me is Ben Dueck. And anyway, he's from a long way from here, from where I am. He's located in Winnipeg, I call it, but it's Winnipeg, Canada. So welcome, Ben. And tell us a little bit how you got started doing what you're doing, and go forth. Go forth.
Yeah, thanks, Mari-Lyn. Thanks for having me on. And yes, it is. It's colder up here than where probably most people who are listening to your show are from. Up in Winnipeg, or Winnipeg, is the some people call it Winnipeg. And so I live up here. I'm kind of born and raised up in this area. And in 2019, I started this leadership development company. And so it's an organization, a company that works with leaders and teams and organizations to basically help them be better versions of who they are, either as a leader, as a team, or as an organization. And so I started it as kind of a culmination of a passion I've always had for leadership development. And about 10 years ago, I went and got my master's degree in leadership. And I remember when I was taking it, and some people asked me, "Oh, so why are you getting it? What do you want to use it for?" And one of the reasons why I wanted to use it was because I wanted to become a better leader in the different areas that I was in, because working with people can be challenging to do well. It's not something that is very easy. Some people might find it easier than others, but in general, working with people has some challenges because people are always unique and they bring their own perspectives to the table. And as you know, you work with a lot of organizations that have questions around how do we do this better. So that was kind of the main reason why. But I would always, in the back of my mind, I would say, one of these days, I want to be a leadership development guy who's able to go and do this as a consultant, coach, however you want to define it exactly. At that time, I didn't have a clear idea. And go and be someone who helps leaders do their jobs better, fill their roles better with their teams. And so in 2019, I branched out, launched out on my own, and that's what I'm doing now, full time, helping leaders be better leaders.
Awesome. But I always use more people like you around, that's for sure. So what do you think some of the biggest challenges you find that your clients really have in becoming a better leader?
Yeah, so part of it, I think, is that leadership is this concept that is really, it's more of an art than a science, right? And like anything that is an art, how do you define art, right? There's some principles that you can pull in some principles, right? Or you can appreciate certain types of art, just like you can appreciate certain types of leadership. But when you're asked to define it and how to improve at it, sometimes it's really hard to narrow that down. And yet leadership is the one of, I think it's pretty common in a lot of kind of organizational health and development kind of aspects. Leadership is the key place for transformation to occur for a whole organization. It starts with the leaders, right? And then you put these leaders in a situation, okay, so now go and lead, go figure out how to lead. And then okay, I can do that. So they go and look on Amazon for leadership books, right? So they type in leadership under leadership books, over 70,000 results under leadership. That doesn't count any kind of articles and webinars and videos. And there's so many resources out there, which is fantastic, right? Because leaders can then use them, but it can also become a little bit of a swimming in an ocean and trying to figure out, which is the cup of water I need to drink for who I am. Yeah. So I think a lot of things that, when I talk to people about what it means to be a better leader, it's helping them to understand who they are themselves first. That's the key step. So that's the big thing when you ask what's the biggest challenge for leaders, is them trying to understand who they are more, and then how to apply that with their teams or even for themselves. Self-leadership is also a big part of that.
Right. When you were explaining that fish, I mean, that reminds me of like at school, when you graduate from elementary school to high school, in elementary school, you're the big fish. So as a leader, if you're not one now and you get promoted to a leader, you just went from a big fish to a little fish. Because like you
Right.
were saying, all those books and all that stuff that's out there, but
Mhm.
really, where do they go? And it's overwhelming.
Well, and one of the things, oftentimes leaders, um, if you're promoted into a leadership role, oftentimes you're promoted into a leadership role because of your expertise in a very specific field, right? And there's nothing
Right.
wrong with that. You've shown yourself to be really good. Let's use an example of you're in engineering, right? So you've shown that you're very good at being an engineer, whether that's
Yeah.
designing things or testing things or whatever the case is. And because you've shown yourself to be so talented in that, when a new leader is needed for the team of engineers, it's oftentimes an engineer who's promoted into that role. And there
Right.
is an aspect of it that can be, natural. Some people are just natural leaders to a certain extent, but oftentimes these people have not had any training or
Hmm.
given to them as to what does that mean? What is different about your former role as an engineer in the team to now being the leader of this team of engineers? What changes? Because stuff does change.
Hmm.
How do you become a better leader in that context? And a lot of organizations don't even know how to go about doing that, which is where we start seeing a lot of the challenges that organizations go through, where people start leaving because they don't feel like they fit. Most people leave an organization because their leaders don't treat them like people, right?
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
don't think those leaders are intentionally trying to be jerks. Like,
Yeah.
I think they just sometimes don't know the power of their role and how to use it best.
Right. Right. You mentioned the last sentence you kind of said before this question was that you were saying about self leadership. Can you just describe what you would call self leadership?
So there's a lot of different phrases that are used around it. Some people talk about emotional intelligence, self-awareness. I mean, those are all kind of phrases that are used. But I think if someone was really trying to figure out what does it mean for self-leadership, the biggest barrier to success is often yourself,
Hmm.
because we've got these different things that we haven't ever figured out how to deal with, whether it's, self-discipline, whether it's understanding what motivates you and even how you react to certain things, right? And
Hmm.
so there's these gaps that we have. I talk about this gap theory that I don't think it's an official theory out there by anyone other than me, but I refer to it as this gap theory where we are right now, where we could be, and there's this gap of trying to get to that point where we could be.
Hmm.
Most of the time, as we bridge that gap, we realize there's actually more and more of a gap than we realize. And to
Hmm.
me, that's self-awareness and self-leadership, is trying to bridge that gap, but also learning to understand, hey, I got a lot of room to grow as who I am. And the more I grow as who I am, that's where I'm going to start seeing things transform with the team that I work with.
Right. Right. And so, what are your some suggestions around that? What do you think that they should do
Right.
to
So one
fill
of the
that gap?
things, yeah. Well, and so I'm an executive leadership coach, and I have a coach myself, and I found huge value for myself in going through
Hmm.
that process of finding someone and saying, hey, can you coach me through this? And that often deals with self-awareness. One of the tools that I recommend, and I'm certified as a Gallup Clifton Strengths coach. I'm not sure, Mari-Lyn, if you're familiar with
Hmm.
the Clifton Strengths assessment. I can talk about that shortly.
Yeah.
But it's an assessment tool that helps people to understand what their natural innate talents are that they bring to the table.
Right.
And then the coaching process I go through with individuals after they take the assessment is helping them to then use those innate talents on a regular basis in regular situations more consistently so they can shine. It's kind of like the old metaphor where if you have a fish and you're trying to teach the fish to climb a tree, you're going to have a tough time teaching that fish to climb a tree. You have to help that fish understand what they're naturally good at, which would be swimming.
Yeah.
And then if they can tap into that, they're going to be a lot more effective in
Right.
order to accomplishing things. So that's kind of the short version. It's an assessment tool that's used in about 90% of the Fortune 500
Hmm.
companies. And it's fantastic. I use it for myself, and I've learned a ton about how I can be better,
Right.
better leader, better team member. And then also, of course, I coach people through that.
Right. 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 So, what are your greatest love? What is it that you really love to do in about your leadership program and
Mhm.
business?
Well, it's really seeing sometimes that light turn on, that light switch turning
Hmm.
on in people's eyes and people's
Yeah.
faces, right? As
Yeah.
they see, oh, that is me, right? Or that is what I need to do, or that is how I can grow.
Right.
And people tapping into that. And I love it. So the Clifton Strengths approach is very positive focused. It's not the traditional way of improving people was all based around weakness, fixing weaknesses,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that's a tough thing, right? It's not a fun
Yeah.
thing to go through at times. And actually, research shows that it doesn't have very much of an impact on growth and transformation, focusing on weaknesses. But when you're able to talk to people about saying, this is what your superpower is, right? This is what you are amazing at.
Yeah.
They just light up. And then when you start saying, this is what you're amazing at, and this is how you can use that, oh, that becomes fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So give us an example of a client you've had that happen.
Sure. So even just this last week, I was working with a principal and really great at what he's doing. And this is his first, oh, my internet connection is unstable. Sorry if that's affecting things.
That's all right. You spaced out. That's okay. Start again.
Yeah. So just this last week, I was working with a principal, a great leader, great individual, really good at what he was doing. He went through the Clifton Strengths Assessment, and we were talking about his top 5 talents. Everyone gets, there's 34 possible talents, but the main report people see is their top 5. And the top 5, the chances of anyone having the exact same top 5 in the exact same in the same order is like 1 in 33 million. So it's a pretty unique combination for each individual. And he asked me the question, he said, well, when are we going to start talking about the ways that my top 5 cause me problems? Version of that question. That wasn't the exact phrasing, but something like that. That was, and I said, let's not talk about that. Let's start with actually, how can you use the top 5 that you have more often? If I gave you a knife to use a knife, would you want to start trying to cut things with the dull side of the knife, or would you want to start cutting things with the sharp side of the knife? And the light turned on when he started thinking, I need to change my whole mindset to think of how I bring these talents, these superpowers I have, into my role as a principal. And he was a great principal already. It wasn't like he was having major problems with it. But as he's able to pull those in and implement those, as the light went on in his eyes, it changed his way of thinking, right? It became a positive-based approach to seeing things happen in his organization. And that, to me, was exciting. Yeah,
yeah. So what kind of things positive did he see that he needed to mind shift him with? You don't have to name him or anything, but just, some of the things that, he saw that it was just a really aha moment for him.
Right. So one of his talent themes that he had was connectedness. So connectedness, the general idea behind the connectedness theme is understanding kind of how everyone fits into the bigger puzzle. And our conversation was focused around COVID-19, which is, of course, a big reality currently in the midst of recording this. And his desire or his ability to kind of see how everyone was able to be a part of the bigger picture. If he was his understanding of that talent, as he was understanding it and growing in it, and then able to think about how do I implement this into the people around me, it allowed him to see that he had this ability to, when he was talking to an individual teacher all on their own over at the other end of the school, in his mind, he's bringing this bigger picture and being able to communicate what that means for that individual in their role as a way of encouraging them, building relationship with them, and helping to inspire them towards something bigger. Not everyone can see things exactly that way. Some people have that same talent as he does, but when he brings that into those relationships, he's able to use that to help inspire others and build a solid relationship with them so they can see how their role as a teacher in a classroom, in a school, wherever it is in the country, is a similar type of role in regards to its impact as someone who might be in California, for example.
Yeah. So it sounds very enlightening what your program does, and just to really help people see who they are truly in a positive note, rather than all the negativity that, most people seem to find that that's where they get stuck at, right?
Well, and it's very much that way. And so the company that came out with this assessment and the approach is called Gallup. And most people know Gallup for being a polling company. They do a lot of polling and research, right? And so they've actually researched their assessment and the results that come out from it. And what they found, one of the interesting things that I think is important to look at is even beyond the workplace, the more that people are able to tap into their strengths and use them to do what they do best, the less likely they are to report experiencing things like physical pain, worry, stress, anger, sadness. Even if they have health problems, they're less likely to report that if they're able to tap into what they're naturally talented at on a daily basis. So for your listeners, whatever role they might be in their organizations, if they're able to find ways to tap into what people are good at and focus on that and draw that out and encourage that, they're going to start seeing this just overall well-being increase in their team members, their engagement in their jobs, their enthusiasm. They're not going to leave, like quit or as soon. And so I think it's a very fantastic approach to take with team members and even with an individual leader, just tap into that.
Right. Yeah, I can certainly see that working very well. So can you tell us a little bit about what services you provide and who your ideal client is or audience that you like to work with?
Great, absolutely. So I do a lot of individual one-on-one executive coaching that happens mostly online, and that's with either current leaders who have been in leadership roles for a while and they want to basically level up their leadership position, that self-leadership development, that growth, that understanding of bridging that gap kind of an idea. Or I do some of that one-on-one coaching with individuals who are new to the role, or individuals who now are being kind of tapped on the shoulder by someone above them in the organization to say, hey, we want to help develop your leadership ability and your self-awareness so that you can be more effective in your role. So that's the one-on-one coaching. I also do virtual workshops. And that's really powerful with teams. When you start tapping into what teams are good at, what their natural abilities are as individuals, and then how they fit as a combined group. And so I do those either face-to-face or virtually. I'm doing a lot of those virtually these days. So everyone completes the assessment, and then they're able to have conversations around that as I talk through what it means to, what their talents are and how they fit together. And then I do some work with organizations, and that's where I work with an organization and say, hey, we're going to implement this positive-based, strengths-based approach throughout your whole organization. So that's not just one workshop, because really one workshop doesn't transform. It's what's the cultural approach that you want to take in regards to a positive-based, strengths-based approach in your whole company. Let's train your managers on how they talk about things with their team. Let's look at how you do your employee evaluations each year and see if we can tie that into a positive strengths-based approach as well. So those are kind of the three things, or three different: the individual, the team, and the organization that I do.
So do you work with KPIs at all, or any of those other kind of measurements, or do you just kind of go along?
So I don't develop the KPIs with an organization myself, but depending on which KPIs, sometimes there's KPIs related to the people side of things. So I would work with the organization and say, how can we implement even the approach of focusing on the positive side of things, the strengths-based approach, even in how you measure some of those KPIs. And it could be things like employee engagement KPIs, turnover, and all those kind of things are shown, even through research, that they improve if you take a positive-based approach. And so that would tweak maybe some of those KPIs. Right.
Yeah, because it's interesting. Somebody said to me the other day, you need to use KPIs. And I'm like, what? I know what a KPI is, but in some things, how do you take a person and put a KPI on them? And I'm like, I don't know how that works, but anyway, whatever.
Yeah, and it's a challenging question, right? Because when you start talking about KPIs with people, it can sometimes feel really cold, right? It can feel like, that sounds so official and regimented. And I think there is a danger there, of course, but there are some KPIs you can look at and you can say, like employee engagement is a huge one, and Gallup has researched that one as well. And worldwide, only about 15% of the workforce is engaged in their work. And roughly about 20% right now are actively disengaged. Actively disengaged, that if your organization has 20% of their employees actively disengaged, that means they're trying to almost like sabotage your organization. That KPI, if you can measure that, you want to decrease the 20% actively disengagement as low as you can, because that's costing you money. I mean, worldwide, Gallup says trillions of dollars with a capital T is costing companies around the world. So there are some KPIs you can look at. You have to be careful they don't get too cold and institutional.
Yeah. I was just kind of stunned at that thing. Well, businesses know about KPIs. I'm like, yeah, but what's that got to do with a person? I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Put them on you must have a belt to troll them on and say, okay, you pass.
Check mark.
Check mark. Okay, so great. So you have a couple of tips you want to share with people about what you do and what you offer, and go from there?
Yeah, so I would, sorry, what
But the question
specifically?
was just,
Yes,
you have some tips to share
right.
for the audience that they can get started. So would that be having the assessment done, or
Right.
would you be able to offer something to help them get going?
Right. Yes, absolutely. So the assessment, the beautiful thing about the assessment, if the assessment itself interests people, it's available. You can get it online through the Gallup website on your own. You don't need to do it through someone like me, although if you can do it through someone like
Yeah.
me as well. You can go to the Gallup website. You can take the assessment. It's a fantastic report that they send you. They send you your top 5 signature themes, or you can pay for the full 34 and you can see all 34 in an
Right.
order. And the report gives you some really valuable information for self-leadership and self-awareness. I'd
Mm-hmm.
encourage anyone who has an interest in their own leadership growth to take a look at that. I also do a free 20-minute consultation around coaching or
Right.
team development as well. So people could get in touch with me and we can have a conversation on what that would look like.
Right.
I do recommend in that case, if someone's interested in the coaching side of things, to get in touch with me before they go buy the assessment. Then they can buy the assessment through me. It all kind of becomes a package. Most of the coaching that I do is based on a package pricing.
Right.
And if you're looking at it from a team dynamic perspective, I always recommend for teams and organizations, have a conversation with me, even individuals, because if you're looking at a coach, a team coach, or just an organizational kind of culture
Mm-hmm.
expert, chemistry and relationship is a very important part of it. So you don't want to engage in a coaching relationship with someone that you just don't feel like you can
You're
get them, or that they can
Yeah.
get you, right?
Yeah.
So I have free 20-minute consultations that I do with people just to have a conversation, and people can ask questions. I can find out what they're looking to grow in, what their
Mm-hmm.
biggest pain points are, and see if there's a good fit. If it's not a good fit, hey, 20 minutes of hopefully encouraging individuals to take a step in their leadership. And
Right.
if it is a good fit, then we can talk about what the next steps are after that.
Right. Right. And so do you have a specific industry or people you like to work with?
You know, it's really any kind of a leader
Okay.
in any kind of leadership role. And sometimes I've wondered if I need to try to narrow that down even further. But leadership is such a broad concept. There's leaders everywhere,
Right.
in every type of industry, in every type of organization, because people are everywhere. Until we
Right.
go completely robotic in the world, there's always going to be people. There's always going to be a need to learn how to be better at working with people and being a better leader of people.
Right. Right. Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Ben. And so with that, you have any final words before we close off the call?
I would just leave one encouragement to everyone who's listening, and it was another study that was done by Gallup, and I'll do a quick summary of it. They did this back in 2007, I think it was, where they went to followers and they asked followers, what do you want or what do you need from your leaders? So it wasn't going to the celebrity leaders, it wasn't going to these famous people, it was going to the people who are following those leaders.
Right.
And they narrowed down to 4 key concepts that followers want from their leaders. So if you're a leader listening to this, if you can focus on these 4 things, you're going to see some transformation in what you do. And
Mm-hmm.
those 4 things are trust. You
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to, your followers need to trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Compassion. You need to show compassion. Your followers need to feel like you care.
Right.
Stability. Stability is just the fact that you have a place of peace and solidness to your leadership, that people can feel like you're meeting their needs right here, right now, and you provide that for them. And then hope. Hope is the vision for the future. What is it that your leadership inspires others toward? If you
Mm-hmm.
can integrate those 4 things, and of course this is a very brief explanation behind it, you're going
Right.
to start seeing some fantastic transformation in your organization, in your team, in your own family. If you do that with your family, it's going to
Yeah.
start making some transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. Also sounds so cool. Thank you very much, Ben. So with that, I'm going to end the call. But thank you for joining us, Ben, and I'm sure that all the people that are listening will find you very insightful. So you'll be able to find Ben at podcasts.heartatworkonline.org. I know it's a long URL, but that's where they can find you. And I'll also send you out the links, Ben, and it's also will be on uh, iTunes, podcasts, and Anchor. So, for people that like to listen and work or watch and work. So they're
Yeah.
available in 2 formats. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I so appreciate it, and enjoy Winterpeg and stay safe. Be
Thanks,
careful.
Mari-Lyn.
And don't forget to be kind. Thank you. Bye.